I am very excited to be talking to Shane Nicholson, who is one of the most esteemed personages in Australian music, let alone the Australian country music scene. Shane, lovely to talk to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, as I've said, and a privilege, actually, because I'm a fan of your music, have been for many, many years. And I'd like to start by saying congratulations on your 5 Golden Guitar nominations.
Thank you.
Well, you won a Golden Guitar last year for the song The High Price of Surviving, proving that even in a year when you don't have an album out, you are still taking home awards, which must be quite alarming for other artists, is all I can say.
It was a very nice one to win, particularly, I mean, they're all nice to win, but that one particularly, because I got to share it with young Leon Milner, who I wrote that song with, and that was his first Golden Guitar, so I felt really chuffed that I was able to kind of stand up there and share it with him for his first one. That was very cool.
Yeah, he's, you have set the bar very high for him now, of course, because any other song he writes is like, well, where's my Gigi?
Very true, very true. He's going to expect it every time.
Yeah, it's so I believe you actually met him. Was it at the Dag Sheep Station songwriting retreat?
I did. That's where I first met him. Yeah, and we were paired up to write. I go to the songwriting retreat every year as a mentor, and with 3 or 4, 4 or 5 other artists every year, and it's like a little family we have every year. And I met Leon that morning. We were paired up to write, and we wrote a song really quickly, like in a couple of hours before lunch. And then I pretty much just put it away in a book and forgot about him for a while. You write a lot of songs at the DAG. In a week you could write 10 songs.
Wow.
But this one just resurfaced for some reason, came back to me. I came across it or something months later, and I thought, wow, there's something cool about that. I could just maybe because we wrote it so fast, and there's a funny thing about co-writing with somebody you don't know, you've never met before. You're kind of getting to know them at the same time as writing something with them, and often with co-writing, the danger of that I've found with co-writing with somebody that you don't know is the song can be quite surface, or quite not all that deep, I guess, because you're kind of still finding your ground with this new stranger, I guess, but this is the opposite of that. This song is like one of the most intensely deep, serious, layered songs that I've ever written, let alone with a stranger. So it was really odd that we kind of came up with that, at 10 o'clock in the morning as complete strangers. It was very strange, but it speaks for itself. I love it.
Well, it would be a quite unusual co-working arrangement, I guess. You meet someone and then it's like, okay, let's create a piece of art together. Go.
Well, you know what? It can work. It can work really beautifully, like it did this time. And every time you do it is different. I've never really had one that's a failure. I've done them all over the world in different places and with different people, and they're usually always fun, or you get something rewarding out of it. Even if you don't get a song, you sometimes you get something out of the experience. You're always learning about writing, but this was just, I don't know, it was almost too easy. Like I'd heard Leon sing the night before, and I was instantly drawn to his vibe, everything about him, but I didn't know what he was like as a writer. So we were just kind of finding our feet, but it was just almost too easy. But sometimes the easy ones are good because, they're just those painless births, that just kind of, they just happen. The song just falls out, for want of a better description.
Yeah. You're in the flow, I guess, is how it might be termed. And I know another song you co-wrote, you actually didn't record, which was Holding Pattern, which Camille Trail and Brad Butcher recorded, and with you as the producer. So it must be quite nice too to see your songs going to different people's hands, different interpretations.
Yeah, I loved that. I loved it. I wrote that in London a couple of years ago as part of a co-writing trip. So I wasn't even writing for myself. It was just like a trip. And I do them every year, where you go around, travel to different cities, and you have co-write sessions lined up, through your publishing company, that kind of thing. And this was just kind of catalogue song that was sitting around and no one had recorded it. And Camille was actually just looking for a song to do. So that was actually my manager's idea, who also manages Camille. And, you know what, we should pair that song up with Camille. And then Brad got involved in it. With the whole thing was just really kind of fun and easy. And I love that song, it would have just probably existed and gone away and nobody ever would have heard it. It's just another catalogue song I'd written. But I love that it's got a life now and people get to hear it. It is very cool, like you say.
Yeah, it was one of my favourite songs of last year, and I listened to it regularly. I think it's also lovely that you could retain your stamp, put your stamp on it rather, because you produced it. But we're here to talk about the songs you're actually singing and recording and your upcoming tour. So The High Price of Surviving, which won that Golden Guitar last year, is on your latest album, Living in Colour, which you released at a time when touring wasn't that feasible. Did you consider holding on to it until the state of the world seemed more settled?
No, actually, you know what? That song wasn't even going to be... Well, the album, no. But that song, the album I was going to release anyway. We certainly did delay it a little bit because of the touring around it. Would have had to have changed. So, yeah, we delayed the record release a little bit. But that song was actually not intended for the record. I actually released it as a single before the album was even close to being finished. It was just a one-off song, and I just felt so drawn to the song, and I just thought, I'm just going to put this out without it being attached to any project. And actually, in hindsight, the interesting thing about that song is that it was ready to go early 2019, but then we sadly lost Glenn Hanna in mid 2019 on May 27, actually my birthday. And so that song instantly felt wrong to me to release around that time, because there was something kind of prophetic in what it was saying. And then the fact that we lost him, you know, and I felt really weird about putting that song out there because it was too close. It seemed like almost, some kind of prophecy being told. And so I did shelve it for another 6 months or so. But it still came out completely unattached to the record on its own, as its own little thing, you know. And I only ended up putting it on the record because, like you say, after we delayed the release a little bit, it had some time since the song had been released, and it had since won the award and those kind of things. So I thought maybe people would expect it to be part of the collection. And thematically it fit. And it just made sense to me to bring it forward then and put it with all of the new songs.
Yeah, I was actually literally going to say thematically it suits, because I think on that album there's a push and pull between, not pessimism, but I suppose sort of like intense pragmatism about life and being human, and then also looking towards being more positive in a way. And I think The High Price of Surviving acknowledges the difficulties of being human, but at the same time encouraging anyone listening to it to keep participating in being human, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's the whole record in a nutshell. You don't even need me in this interview.
I think I do, Shane. I did not create that record.
That's exactly what the record is. That's the dichotomy of that record, which mirrors the dichotomy of my life. And that's how I see my existence at the moment. There's two congruent lines of existence running in my life, and one is increasing I wouldn't say pessimism, but kind of, maybe it is pessimism, but more cynical. I'm reaching peak cynic, you know, in one line, but on the other timeline I'm becoming way more philosophical about everything that's going on in the pessimistic timeline or the cynical timeline, and I'm taking more, I guess, putting more value in my relationships now with friends and you know, obviously my kids and my close family and whatever, but just taking stock of those things more, I guess, and realising the importance of them. A lot of this is the fallout of us losing Glenn Hanna, you know, and he was part of my close gang, and that gang's pretty small, you know, and I think when you lose someone in that gang to suicide, you start to think oh wow, how are we not aware of this? And we need to kind of, we're not as close as we thought we were. You
Right.
know, we might think we are, but we're not. So it kind of, for all of us, it made us kind of pull a bit tighter, you
Right.
know, and we've actively worked at our friendships more. It sounds kind of weird to say it, but I guess maybe you take them for granted a lot. And now we've kind of actually realised we have to put time and effort into them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually make time for each other and you know, make sure we speak and talk regularly rather than just kind of accidentally letting a month go by. You know, those kinds of things that it's just kind of changed our mentalities a bit. And so that's a timeline that's running, you know, congruently alongside this growing cynicism about the world around me. So thankfully they're both there and, you know, in some kind of yin-yang fashion balancing me out, I think. But that's exactly what the record is in a nutshell.
Well, I think that that dichotomy or that tension between those parallel lines is probably what does create the art, you know. And I think one of the songs that expresses that really interestingly is Simple Man, because you sing about what might happen if you were a simple man, but the whole way through the song, I think, well, your music probably wouldn't exist if you were that simple man. So perhaps it's okay to not be a simple man.
Yeah, and I guess I wasn't really trying to figure out if I should be or not, or if it's better or worse. It was really just me being, that song is just me sitting in the middle of my dad and my son.
Right.
And I grew up with a dad who worked really hard all his life, you know, 9 hours a day, 6 days a week, and never had a day off in my entire life, you know, that. And he worked in a job that he kind of always said he didn't love. Didn't hate it, but he didn't love it. But he seemed so happy, you know, and this could just be me seeing it through my, you know, my rose-coloured glasses of my very fortunate childhood. But he always seemed really content, you know. And then now that I've got a son, I've started thinking about what's going to make him content, because I've been really lucky. I've had lived a different life to my dad, and I've gone and chased all these dreams I had as a teenager, and fortunately I was able to do those things, and even better, was able to achieve almost every, you know, life goal I've wanted to achieve musically. I've done it, you know, and I thought that's really cool, but it hasn't always made me very happy. You know, it's satisfying and it's a buzz, but it doesn't always make you happy. And then so I started to think about the difference between my dad and I and our lives, and then how that will filter down to my son, who's, you know, now 14 and starting to kind of, I guess, face that, you know, who am I? What am I going to be? What am I going to do?
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. So again, it's not me having any answers. My records never provide answers. All I do is ask questions.
Well, they're good questions to ask, and I think that's part of the thought-provoking nature of the songs is what keeps people coming back, because there are always little nooks and crannies in those songs to find. But I also, talking about nooks and crannies, but this time of instruments, you had to explore all of those pretty much on your own to make this album, because it was a lockdown album. And I was reading that you actually, apart from some drums that were played by someone else, you pretty much played everything.
I did, and I had moved into a new studio, so my girlfriend and I bought a house 1 week before we heard the words COVID or, you know, coronavirus. So 1 week, you know, 1 week before. So in hindsight, I'm glad we did, because I would have been too scared to if it was a week later. So I had moved into a new studio and I didn't have a drum room. If I was in my old studio, I probably would have done all the drums as well myself. But I actually found that I did do it all myself. But I had Josh Hubert playing drums up in the Blue Mountains for me. He was working on projects for me anyway, for other productions. So I just tagged a lot of my songs on the end, you know. And so he would email me drums, and then I would email things off to Matt Fell at the end, who I've worked with for many years and produced my last few records. So I trust him a lot, and I would get to the point where I felt like, oh, this song sounds just that's enough Shane on that song. I might send that off to Matt and get him to de-Shane it a little bit, you know. And so we had a little routine going, and you know, I wanted to include them, even though we couldn't physically be in the room together. It was the first record that the three of us made without Glenn being part of our team. He's always, it's the four of us, you know, so it was maybe a good way for us to do it, because being in the room together would have maybe highlighted the fact that he wasn't there. So maybe it was a good way for us to navigate the first record together without him by doing our parts separately and phoning them in, so to speak.
Yeah, right. Yes, literally phoning them in, but not figuratively phoning them in. But I'm intrigued that on a Shane Nicholson record, you should want to de-Shane it a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's very easy to get too shamed. You know, like when I'm making a record on my own in my studio, and I guess because through that COVID period and still now, I was working more as a producer than I ever had in my life. Ironically, as the music industry was grinding to a halt, there was more and more music being made. I guess maybe artists were locked at home writing songs, and the natural next step is to make records. So ironically, I was busier than ever as the touring all dried up and stopped, just working in the studio. So I was incredibly grateful for that. But it also meant that I was working all day, playing instruments and making music. Brilliant. I loved it. But it meant that when it came to nighttime and I had to make a bit of more of my record, I was like just really bored with myself. Right. I just wanted somebody else's input, involvement, you know.
Well, that's fair enough. I would imagine. But as you said, you were producing a lot of other people's music. I would really like to know what your weekly planner looks like between writing songs, obviously preparing those songs for production, because you don't. I wouldn't think you go from just, here's a song and whoops, now I'm going to record it. So there's pre-production, there's actually recording, and then thinking about a tour. So do you have a rigidly organised schedule?
It's chaos,
right?
Really. There is a schedule, but it's quite chaotic, and it's a joint one that I have access to. My manager has access to, my family. So every time something gets added, everybody gets pinged, right. And it, you know, like, okay, alert everybody, Shane's life has changed again for, you know, and so it's like, it's so narcissistic that everybody revolves around my schedule. It is a crazy schedule, I've got to say. But I think I couldn't, you know, I have a really great manager who's quite good at fielding a lot of stuff and trying to reduce my anxiety levels by not passing it all on to me. So he can work out some of the trickier stuff and then just tell me what I have to do and where I have to be and when.
Well, and part of what he's telling you have to do and where to be and when is shows that you're about to play starting, I think, on the 3rd of February. And I'm wondering if before you start a tour, you have first day of school nerves.
Well, not normally, but I noticed it kind of, we actually got to start this tour in South Australia before Christmas. So just in December, I think we got to play 4 shows, which was originally going to be the end of the tour.
Oh, right.
And because of all the COVID rescheduling, it ended up being the start of the tour. So we did get 4 shows under our belt, and enough shows to remember what I was missing by not having been able to do it for 2 years, you know. But yeah, there was a little bit. First time, I've never really felt nervous in my life. I don't really know what that sort of feels like. I guess I know what it feels like, but it's not really something that I'm aware of. But it was a feeling of uncertainty maybe before, like, am I even going to remember these songs? It's been 2 years since I've even listened to one of these songs, let alone performed one of them. So, but, you know, you get up there and it's sort of a muscle memory, you know, and it just came back, and within 10 minutes felt comfortable again. But I do remember the first song. I don't even know how to stand on stage anymore. Like, do I look like an idiot up here? Like, the whole thing felt very foreign, you know?
Yeah.
It was very strange not playing for 2 years for anybody that, you know, has never gone longer than a few days in their adult life without playing a show. It feels really weird to stop for that amount of time.
Well, because there wasn't even Tamworth, of course, last year to drop into the middle of anything, so you didn't even get that one show.
True, very true.
It's I've completely forgot what I was going to say then. What I will say is I know you had Camille Trail with you for those South Australian dates, and she is joining you for several of these dates, if not most of them, coming up. So how did that go? Because I know you produced her album. I would think being a producer actually gets you the good inside track on who you might like to have supporting you, and obviously with Camille, you decided, yep, she's the one.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the great thing about doing what I do as a producer is I get to work with, acts that I really love, and then take them on tour, and I get to see them every night. It's kind of selfish as well, and, it's not just Camille. I've got Michael Ward doing shows on this next tour and have had him play with me many times over the years. And because, again, I've produced 4 of his records, and, he's just one of my favourite artists ever, like anywhere in the world, of any era. Like, I just love everything he does. And so, yeah, it's really quite a cool thing to be able to have people that you are invested in, and I feel invested in artists. I don't just make the record because they pay me to do it. I kind of pick ones that I think I can add value to and that I will feel connected to artistically, or creatively. And so by the time you finish a record, you do feel quite, at least emotionally, invested in it. So being able to put them in a room in front of a really great listening audience and give them a chance to play to those kinds of people rather than in a noisy pub, then I relish that opportunity to be able to, give them that. And that's what I've found is really great after all these years of touring, to have, no matter where I go, I've managed to be able to create or curate a really cool listening audience that come for a really special show. And it's great to be able to give them that opportunity to stand in front of those music lovers, and so that they have an opportunity to fall in love with them like I did.
Well, and of course, this really begs the question of something else that you could add to that schedule, which is festival organisation. Because now that you know all these artists that you've worked with and they're great, you could just create your own festival.
Wow, my manager does not need me to come up with any more ideas of things that I want to do. The poor guy fields phone calls from me every half hour with a new idea of what we need to do. So I'm going to call him and say, I've got festivals on the go. I think we should do.
I think you've got the built-in list, right? Like you've several years producing now, and intrinsically who these artists are and what they can do. So therefore, the lineup and the order of it, the different stages, I think it's all there. Anyway, I'll leave that idea with you, Shane.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great idea if I can put a bunch of people in place, delegate, to do all the work for me. That sounds like a lot of hard work.
Well, I imagine organising a festival is, particularly in this environment, because who knows when it could get cancelled. But look, I should leave you to go back to, no doubt, producing someone else's album, or at the very least, tuning a guitar or getting ready for the tour. I'm sure your fans will be very keen to see you on the road. I know I am, because I'm coming to see you at the Factory Show in Sydney. So
cool.
I will very much look forward to it, and thank you very much for speaking to me.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.